Have you ever heard the saying, debt is the root of all evils? Never get into debt. Debt is slavery. And to some extent, that is accurate. Given that your bills are not waiting for you when you are trying to pay them off and you are drowning in debt, your life is gone. Since there is constantly interest charged on loans, they are expanding day by day. Even with all of this, the U.S. has accepted debt. The overall consumer debt in the U.S. is close to $15 trillion. Consequently, the average household now owes more than $5,300. The U.S. economy as a whole is made up of that, as the GDP is just over $21 trillion. The good news is that it isn't always bad, as I will share with you. That is an unpopular opinion given that the majority of our loans are bad debt. You most likely have credit card debt, a car loan, and possibly student loans, and you are probably thinking that it will take decades for you to pay off all of your debts. How on earth can having debt be advantageous? Let's look at how wealthy people still use debt to earn even more money to better grasp how debt may be a good thing. It could sound a little perplexing since, in the first place, why would someone with a lot of money use debts? That is intended for use by those without access to financial resources. However, it isn't how capitalism operates. If used properly, debt may be a tremendous tool. 1. The majority of trade is debt-based. It could sound a little contentious because I personally would never borrow money to start a business, which is a terrible idea. However, in some industries, particularly conventional ones, borrowing debt is your best choice. Say you want to market pens. It's a very popular product, and demand for it is almost always present. In an ideal world, you would take a plane to China and locate a plant that makes that kind of pen at a reasonable cost. You would buy a container of pens, send them to the United States, and then give them to your customers. However, these days, most of that is done online through platforms like Alibaba. Unless you need to fly to the factory for a more involved product. The catch is that you don't actually need to pay for the thing to get it first. I'll tell you how. China has developed as the world's factory during the last 50 years, producing practically everything. Numerous factories continuously manufacture everything the world needs, and in order to facilitate sales, the majority of these factories would be happy to lend you their goods in exchange for payment at a later date. Naturally, you will need to establish some sort of confidence with them first, as they won't lend to strangers, but that's how business has been conducted for the previous 50 years. You would pay the factory and borrow more products whenever the customer sold the product in the US or any other country in the world. In essence, you're saying to the factory, you know how to produce it, let me help you sell it. That will be my profit if I can sell it for anything more than this. The second thing that makes this tactic great is that you aren't investing your personal money in this transaction. Selling is one of the most important skills you can learn because of this. 2. Refinancing. Due to its many exceptions, real estate debt is the best sort of debt. You are paying more taxes if you don't have a mortgage. To be able to take advantage of all those deductions, wealthy people frequently have numerous mortgages. Remember that every dollar you avoid paying in taxes and instead earn through other means is another way for affluent individuals to amass even more wealth. But allow me to offer you a more useful approach. This is essentially how wealthy individuals become wealthy in real estate. Say you have $200,000 in savings. Even if it seems like a lot of money, it's really only peanuts. Not even a home can be purchased. Of course, since you need to put 20% down, you can't receive a mortgage up to $800,000. However, this is the key. Let's imagine you discover a property that costs $500,000 to buy. It requires some, possibly a lot, of renovation because it is in poor shape. You go to a bank and pay a 20% down payment to obtain a mortgage. Let's assume that your renovation budget will be $50,000, or around 10% of the home's overall cost. To refinancing your mortgage, you had to go to the bank once more. That property was worth only $500,000 when you obtained your first mortgage because no one wanted to live there due to its terrible condition. However, since you renovated it, more individuals are now interested in renting it out. So, let's imagine that the property's market worth increases to $700,000. Let's say you are planning to obtain a mortgage with an 80% loan. However, 80% of $700,000 is $560,000. Out of that sum, $400,000 will be given to the first bank that provided you with your initial mortgage. A further profit of $110,000 will be left after deducting the additional $50,000 that you spend on renovations. You borrowed $110,000 to make the money, and now you own the house that you can rent out to increase your equity and earn passive income. Furthermore, since you have a mortgage, you will be exempt from paying taxes. Real estate investors frequently engage in this activity. Can you actually see now that this is bad? I'll leave that up to you to respond to in the space below for comments. 3. Hedge funds. Hedge funds are created by the wealthy for the wealthy to make the wealthy even richer, and they typically employ unpopular tactics. Mortal individuals like you and I do our best to anticipate which businesses will expand and increase in value, and we spend the money we have worked so hard to earn in the hopes that these businesses will expand. However, hedge funds frequently employ a completely different approach. When businesses fail or go bankrupt, as it did in the instance of GameStop, they attempt to profit. Nevertheless, in that instance, the internet tested hedge funds, causing them to lose more than $13 billion. However, how do hedge funds generate income from debt? Let's say you predict that the price of a particular stock, such as Facebook, will fall because you know that the company that makes the most popular smartphone, Apple, will announce next week that it will no longer permit apps to track you, such as Facebook or Instagram, track your online activity, or put privacy first. This will significantly harm Facebook's business model. So you pick up the phone and dial your broker to borrow one Facebook stock from him for, say, $100 and sell it right away for $100 on the open market. Congrats! You now have $100 in your pocket, but your broker is still owed one share of Facebook. Let's assume you are correct and Facebook's stock price drops to $70 the next week. You use that $100 to purchase one Facebook share at a discounted price of $70, return the stock to your broker, and keep the difference. Congratulations! You have profited $30 from a full stock. Though it appears straightforward in theory, doing it well is quite hazardous and complicated. What occurs if you are mistaken? What if the cost increases by 50% tomorrow? You still need to pay interest for borrowing that one Facebook share and return it to your broker. To return the stock to your broker, you must now purchase it for $200. The amount you invested is the most you can lose when you buy a stock and try to sell it when it increases, but not when you short it. Your losses increase as the price rises. Since the stock price might possibly increase eternally, you could theoretically sustain limitless losses. However, if you have 100 analysts working for you, this tactic can bring you a fortune. 4. Forex. A market where currencies are traded is called Forex. International trade is facilitated by it. In China, US dollars are accepted. To pay your staff, for instance, in China, you would need to purchase Chinese yuan. Therefore, there is a market where anyone or any company can enter and buy foreign currencies, and these currencies fluctuate depending on several variables. For instance, if the Fed raises interest rates, this will reduce the amount of dollars available on the market, strengthening the US dollar relative to other currencies, or vice versa. So you may make a lot of money in this market if you can forecast which currencies will increase or decrease. However, the fact that you can borrow an additional $100 for every dollar you use to trade in Forex sets these markets apart from the rest. This implies that you can hold a position worth $100,000 if you trade with $1,000. Even a tiny profit of 1% would be significant. 5. Credit score. You can see that debt is an effective weapon. Every successful firm, corporation, or entrepreneur uses debt in some capacity, particularly if you have a tried-and-true business plan. Stop assuming that all debt is bad because almost every organization uses borrowing to finance purchase orders. Of course, high-interest loans like credit card debt are terrible, but lowering the lender's risk of lending you money will result in a lower interest rate. How do you go about that? You establish a reputation for being a trustworthy borrower. there are hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of dollars in banks that are just waiting to be lent. Additionally, banks have the ability to produce money out of thin air even when none exists.